fellow mystics. Hey, what's the difference between being reshaped or even refined in a situation and actually losing part of yourself, being cut back? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Let's join the conversation.
This podcast is a presentation of Pioneer Dream, celebrating 30 years of moving stories for our corporate, nonprofit, and entertainment partners. We invite you, fellow misfits, to join the conversation with text, emails, or just messages in the comment section below. As always, you can share this podcast with anyone you think would get it by sending the link now. Thanks for listening.
Hello, all you mystics out there, and welcome back to the podcast. I am joined by Anjanette, my co-conspirator, as always. Hello, Anjanette.
Hello.
How are things for you? I should even ask.
No, don't even ask.
Okay.
No, everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's one of those. We had lots of storms last night.
Yes.
We were very fortunate not to have damage, but the sleep was roughish and all that.
We've had two storms, and maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks that were at Oz level. Like
Yeah.
they were at the intensity where if you woke up in another place, you'd be like, yep, makes sense.
Yes.
That was
Well, did you see in that front yard on Cherokee Street, the trampoline
Cherokee Avenue,
that
yes.
was literally crunched? So it's like a full-size trampoline, and it looked as if someone had tried to close it.
Right.
And that was just from wind. That wasn't even
And
a
that
tornado.
was actually, and it started in their backyard. So there's a
No.
2-story house that somehow it got up and over and around. And yeah, it was
You
intense.
have got to be kidding me. Did it crush any of their cars?
No, though we did have one car crushed
Wow.
2 doors down. Shout out to Tom and Keely. Sorry about your
Yes,
van.
the minivan is not doing well. And neither is the tree that fell on it.
It's a compact now, so
It's a compact car. So we were really fortunate. But anyway, lack of sleep. So, we try not to drink energy drinks all the time, but there are just a couple days you need them.
but when you're doing a podcast,
Yeah, that's right. And
exactly
so we
right.
went for the old school sugar-free Red Bull. That's
Yeah.
a free endorsement. If
That's
you want to
it.
be as awesome as we are on some days.
And actually, we don't really, as far as energy drinks go, we don't really drink Red Bull as much anymore. That's not our, well, this is a funny little aside, guys.
Is it?
So we had storms last night, and the normal place in which we would get snacks and beverages and our energy fix,
Yes.
the On Q here in Oklahoma.
Which we still call Jack's for those of you who are old
the
school.
old Jack
Back in the
Rivets.
day, it was called Jack's.
We used to be able to get fried gizzards and pizza pockets. And
That's disgusting. You never
and
had a
potato
gizzard, did you?
wedges. There were a number of times that I showed up and I only had like $2 in my pocket, and it would surprise you, but gizzards are relatively cheap.
That's disgusting.
But when you are, 16, 17 and you're starving
And it's fried. Yeah.
it's going to fill a void of some kind.
Well, I mostly
The most important void it filled was one of my arteries, but that's the whole other thing. Yeah. So anyway,
you're paying for that now.
I said all to say that because of the storm last night, the Jack Rivets, now the On Q,
Jack's On Q.
is closed because they lost power
Yeah.
and who knows whatever else. And I hope that their stock is okay because they had a lot of freezers and rollers and stuff in
What
there.
was funny was the only place that we could go to get
Yes.
a drink behind it was our normal liquor store, which we are not
Fifth
normally
and
there
Shawnee.
Wednesday
Shout out to
mornings.
Fifth and Shawnee.
Yeah, that's right.
And we walked in and probably only 2 customers today who will come in and not buy alcohol.
Yeah.
we just buy
We just
energy
got a
drinks.
sugar-free Red Bull.
Yeah, and so anyway, that's fueling us today, and we're getting by. But
Yeah, for sure. So what's going on with you?
well, speaking of Jack's and old school, today I'm starting this conversation with an old school. I guess it was an old school fantasy of mine.
Oh boy.
So I, as a lot of us do as kids growing up, there's a lot of adults in your life. They're parents, teachers, aunts, uncles, all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
And growing up, I lived with this fantasy that you would reach this kind of magic age,
Okay.
and you would sort of kind of graduate into adulthood.
Yeah.
And when you graduate into adulthood, there's this great transformation that happens
Okay.
where all the people around you now, your contemporaries,
Yeah.
all sort of act like adults. Like this vision you have, like
you mature.
Yeah, like
You
all of
mature
a
into
sudden
that.
name calling would cease and gossip would cease and that kindness would reign and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I really did believe that there was this moment where you kind of you kind of go into a chrysalis or cocoon, and you wake up, a full-grown man person now, and you would have all those qualities to you.
Yeah.
And
everyone is like the adults on the Mr. Rogers show in the neighborhood. They're
really
nice and kind.
That's really the TV we grew up with, which is like
and the
all
sitcoms.
the adults were Andy Griffith, and it was Family Ties and Silver Spoons and all that kind of stuff. And all those adults, would help you with the emotional roller coaster that was adolescence.
Yes.
And even if something got off for the adults, at the end of the episode, they'd sit on the end of your bed, tussle your hair, and say, adult things and apologize. And you would think, oh, this is okay. So so the adults do recognize when things come off the rail. And so I had this thought, this belief, and I, even in high school, I didn't really have it for all the melodrama that everybody else was living in, and the John Hughes storylines that people were living by, and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure I was plenty dramatic on my own, but I just desperately wanted out of that whole scene, and I knew I was never going to fit into that scene anyway. So
to get onto your mature adulthood,
to start wearing cardigans and smoking pipes and putting on soft shoes and all that kind of stuff. And
I like the soft shoes idea.
And then you have this reckoning or this moment where you do get older and you realize, no, these adults are just big people that have jobs to go to instead of American Lit, but they're still children inside. They're still petty. They're still insecure. They're still a mess. And then that really got compounded when we started working. Because we go into the workforce and we're young and we're happy and we're joyful and hopeful.
So optimistic.
So optimistic. And we just had this life force in us. And a lot of people still carry that life force. But in a sense, it was a bit of a divine light in you, this divine hope. I have possibilities. I'm a promise.
I'm a possibility. The great big capital P.
Right.
Somebody remembers that that's listening to this right now.
So then you go to work, and I understand it now, but if you had this sense of hope, if you had spark, if you had charisma.
Yeah, spunky.
If you were, it's this Mary Tyler Moore, you've got spunk. Thank you. I hate spunk. I get it now because people, when you come in and you hate your job and you hate your life, and then someone next to you has enthusiasm, you just want to smash them under your comfort-loving gel shoes, You
say life will crush you eventually.
And they do. And so they would try and smash that out of you. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter where you work. You could work for a corporation that's trying to take over the world. You could work for
like ours.
Yeah. Or you work for a nonprofit group that's trying to save the world, or you could work for a church which is trying to do both. And you would just have those people that somehow they believe they're the only ones that are working.
Yeah.
They're the only ones pulling their weight. If they stepped out, the company would die, and this whole thing, and they've been crushed. And then they make this attempt at kind of dimming you down to their level. And normally the way it happens is like this. Someone will say something, whether directly or indirectly, whether directly or with a bit of snark.
Yeah.
And the end result of it is always the same. Somehow they say something or do something to kind of put you in your place.
Yeah.
And the end result is you become self-aware. You become self-conscious. It starts to feel like you don't really have a right to be sparky, spunky, full of life, enthusiastic.
Oh, don't I know? I was a former target.
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly. And so the more of that life that we exude, the more exuberant we are. And it can be a lot, especially early on when you've kind of gone down the road.
I was a bit too spunky.
But the end result of it is there's a quality in you that you now have to manage, or that you now have to potentially sacrifice, or that you now have to snuff down. This is who you are. This is what you are. And now you have to go into your control panel and disconnect the spunk wire or the enthusiasm wire or the hope wire, and you have to dumb that thing down. And so we're sacrificing this part of this life force that is in us, this light that is in us. So we actually did a conversation like this about 2 years ago in a Dreamers event. It wasn't quite so spiritually oriented, but I want to do a couple of these things that we did in that night, and I think it will help people. So what I'd like to do now for just a second, if you'll trust us, is I would like for you to go back to one of those places. It may have been 10, 15, 20, 80 years ago. It may have been 5 minutes ago. And see one of those episodes, maybe one of the most distinctive ones, or maybe it was the earliest one, where someone said something to you that to try and diminish you, to try and dim your light, to try and dim literally who you are. So go back to that place for a second.
Do you want us to close our eyes?
You can close your eyes, unless you're driving.
Don't drive and close your eyes. Okay, but
if you're in the coffee shop and you've got your earbuds on or whatever, just close your eyes and go back to that moment. Who do you see there in that moment? What are your surroundings? You see that spot, and you see that interaction, that exchange, where someone has said something to you to turn you down. And in this moment, I would like for you to make the intentional decision to release them. We can call that forgiveness. We can call that release. We can call it letting go. Most people act out of pain. They don't always know what they're doing. Sometimes they do. But the reason why we're doing this, outside of the fact that it is forgiveness, and which is incredibly important, but when we don't release those things can kind of become an anchor, and they keep us tethered back to that place. They keep us from being able to move forward because we keep coming back to that wound, that injury. And so in this moment, we're going to release that person. And if it helps you to say that out loud, I think that's important, and it can be really helpful. But we're going to forgive that person. We're going to release them. We're going to release that pain from that moment. And this is something that we might have to do more than once. You might come back to this in a couple of days and have to do that again. You might have to choose to, maybe for the next 5 or 10 days, make this physical decision in your own meditation and your own prayer to really seal this and say, okay, I'm coming back to this and Mr. Ron, and I'm just going to forgive that teacher, that parent, that jealous sibling, that jealous friend, coworker, whoever it was. I'm going to release them. And you do that for a couple of days. And now I want you to do this next step. So in this next step, which is really, really important, I want you to see the thing that was taken from you, from somebody else. It might have even been yourself. You might have made a choice in a moment where you thought, here's an opportunity, here's a situation, and I'm not good enough. You're not good enough to do this. And so you kind of essentially self-sabotaged yourself, or you talked yourself out of something, and you became the critic. Or maybe it was just a matter of a life circumstance. You come out of the gate strong and you're feeling good, but life is hard, and to maintain this person that you are takes a certain energy, and you get tired of fighting that, and so you just let go of who you are. So whether it was another person, whether it was life, whether it was yourself, I want you to look down kind of at your feet and see that glowing thing at your feet right now, this thing that was taken from you, taken out of you, this enthusiasm, this love, this whole thing. And I would like for you to pick it back up and put it back in you, put it back in your place. It might help you to put your hand on your chest and kind of seal that. It might help you to breathe it back into place with a deep inhale, and you're literally putting this thing that was taken out of you, partially or fully, you're putting that back in you. Your hope, your vibrancy, your sense of humor, your joy, and you're putting that back in. Now, it doesn't have to be the same application it was, when you were a kid, like maybe you knew you were a good artist, or you were good at math, or you were good at whatever. Maybe you were a good leader for your student council or something like that, and someone spoke to you and you thought, okay, I'm going to seal that off. I'm going to carterize that. I'm going to let that go. It might not be the same application right now, but it is the essence of what you lost. This light, this part of you that was carterized, this part of you that was cut off. And we're going to put that light back in us, and we're going to hold on to that. Yeah, that's a pretty good thing. And now I'm going to give you two other little things that I think are really important to this. One is I'm going to encourage you to go to coffee with someone, get a bite to eat with someone, get a beer with someone or a drink or whatever. And I want you to relate the story to them, because in relating it to them, it will help solidify it in you. You are explaining and expressing something you've been in, and the idea of speaking it out loud to another person will help solidify that thing. And it will encourage them at some level to look inside themselves. And now, and this part is a little difficult, but I think it's also important. We all are humans, right? So this experience that we've gone through is incredibly personal and also incredibly human. I don't know why, but this becomes a kind of universal experience. Some people would say it's about coming up or whatever, and this, that, and the other. I don't believe it has to be that way, but it is a very common experience. Lots of people go through this thing where they get cut down, where they get minimalized, where they get shut down. And so we had this opportunity to refine that spot. But if that has happened to us, is there a chance that we have unintentionally done that to somebody else? That there was a moment where we gave sobriety without compassion, or that we spoke the truth but we did it without love, or that we were harsh because we thought by being harsh somehow we were protecting someone from falling or protecting someone from failure or whatever. And we didn't realize the other side of that damage. If those things have happened to us, there's a possibility that we may have done that to someone else, that we were too flippant with somebody else's dream, or too flippant and dismissive with someone else's enthusiasm. There are ways that we can encourage and bless even if we don't endorse, and we just give people the freedom even to fail sometimes. But if we've done that, if you can see yourself in that place, if someone comes to mind, if some exchange comes to mind with your child or your nephew or with a friend or a sibling or a parent even, then maybe there's an opportunity to go and make that right. Because everyone deserves that chance at being healed. Everyone deserves that chance at being made alive again. Everyone deserves to be the fullness of who they were literally designed to be before we get beaten up and it gets beaten out of us. So we can take this moment and we can see that place where maybe we've unintentionally done that to someone else, and we can go and say, hey, you one day you expressed your idea for this and I probably didn't receive it the right way, and I'm sorry. And that will heal you, and that will help heal them, and then it might help restore that light back in them, that glow Joe that we talked about last week. So we did this very exercise the night of Dreamers, and it was so fruitful, so life-giving. It was really encouraging. But there is this thing, I think, about kind of living intentionally where we have to choose to hold on to who we were made to be. And people like you, I think, who are creative and enthusiastic, you've seen a lot of that. So are there any steps that you take to help kind of make sure as you go on that you're holding on to who you were designed to be, that you kind of keep that fight to be who you were made to be?
What you said about, sometimes people speak the truth, but they forget the love part.
Right.
And I mean, I've done that to people recently.
We all get, we're tired in a moment. And I think that's the value of this to an extent. So one, there's like a primary benefit and a secondary benefit. I think the primary benefit is if you can restore or go back to those moments of injury that maybe you cauterized a part of your heart because you feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm not supposed to be funny anymore. I'm supposed to take myself more seriously, or I'm supposed to do this, and this. And if you can restore part of that, that's brilliant. And then the other part of it is realizing our exchange with the people. So the words we use or our response or reaction, especially as a parent, man.
Oh, man, that's tough. Yeah.
There's just days when you're just tired, or you just realize that your child might be setting themselves up for a certain level of failure. We've gone through that because Evangeline does a whole lot of creative exploits, and not all of them are well thought out.
But they're big and messy. She's like her dad.
And a lot of them, are going to crash and burn. So there could be something in you and your response to that. They would try and save them from that. But that's also part of the learning curve is the crash and burn.
Yeah, for sure. She'll probably have a lot of those because the experiences she'll have to work through because of things we've done, or sometimes teachers are different. If who you are is a lot, which is great, those make the best adults, then that can be tough. And that's, but I think sometimes the trick is getting a sense of those things you feel like God really put in you that are your genuine, unique characteristics. And then sometimes there are experiences where some of that does need to be shaped because it can be a little bit too much. You want to retain who you are, but also, if who you are is to always speak the truth in a moment and go in and be really bold, that's great. But if you do that during somebody's lecture in a classroom, that's not the right timing. So for me, some of that was taking that message and maybe taking any wisdom that could be there in I guess letting God sort of refine me, but also staying true to who I really am. And and most of the time, we kind of overcorrect that. We do too much. We say, I am too loud, or I am too enthusiastic, and we totally cut it out and just try to start being quiet. And that's not going to work.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Just the discernment of saying, what do I take from this? How much of this is something that maybe God is saying to me through somebody else, and how much of this is something that is trying to change who I fundamentally was designed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you get a chance to see what that looks like.
But I mean, it's so important for us to retain those things. That's what makes us individuals. And I think, I was very fortunate to be brought up with the idea that each of us are a beautiful, creative, unique expression of God's character. And so there's only one me, all those even the little song we were singing, I'm promise, I'm possibility, I'm a promise with a capital P. But that was it. It was sort of knowing that God has created each one of us in such a special way, and that's what makes us effective as people, is to be who we are instead of trying to be like someone else. And so holding on to that, one of the things that kind of helped me in my early adult years, I remember my dad saying, not only does God love you, He likes you. And then I think it was Brennan Manning, the author, that said, God gets quite a kick out of me. But the idea, just like you look at the kids and you're like, oh man, she always is so cute when she does this. Like, have you seen this? And it's really funny when she plays the drums, she does this, and she can also do this. Have you seen this? And so trying to remind ourselves and see our uniqueness as a creation that God brought about on purpose, while still maybe sometimes being open to being refined a little bit, There's a trick there. But what fun would it be if we were all the same? And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times in adult land and also in church land, have you ever been in situations where you've been to like a church or a certain group? I remember some of these in college that we went to, and everyone kind of talked the same, like they had the same inflection and the same, and that's just kind of normal with humans. We tend to group up together, but and it would be a little bit like, I don't want to be just like the leader here, or you know, all those things, and I feel like a lot of times in religious situations, organized religious situations, that I would get a lot of pressure to conform to what their vision of what a believer should be, or a female believer, or a musician. You know, that
I think the main thing is that you continue to fight for the authenticity of who you are.
Yeah.
Even while you're being refined, even while you're being changed, even while you're growing and stretching. And there is something about the healing that comes from going back to some of those moments, and the way it helps us to be more aware of other people in the process and our connection with them.
Yeah. I almost need to make a list of some of those and go through them, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I think my favorite part of the visualization that you did, I know you were just going as you felt was right at the time, but the idea of, did everyone see the movie? I don't know if everyone saw the movie Inside Out, but anyway, basically they had these beautiful, they're almost like bowling balls, but they were very beautiful. They represented their memories or their emotions, and they glowed, these balls. And so that's what I imagined at my feet, and being able to lift that up, that piece of who I am, that someone tried to knock out of me a little bit, or knock a few of those out, and taking it and putting it back in, you know, and allowing God to come and do that in our hearts. That's pretty cool.
Well, it's the beauty of
a really good visual.
It's the beauty of, I think, who God is, in the way that He restores, and the way that He heals, and so often things are not forever. So you can be wounded, or you can have a wounding experience, and realize that doesn't have to last forever, or be the last word of that. That there's hope for restoration. There's hope for healing. There's hope that you can, and even the wounds that we take so often become sources of life, and sources of compassion, and sources of understanding. So that's, you know, it's God using all these things for beauty, and all these things for hope, and all these things. But, you know, I think back about that person I was as a child, you know, as an adolescent, and there's so much of that energy I want back. There's so much of that enthusiasm that I want to replace cynicism.
Sure.
I don't
we have
want
to fight to keep that.
I don't want cynicism to live inside of me. I want to have that encouragement, and that, you know. So I think that's possible in this mystery that we live in.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think a lot of the places perhaps where people tried to dumb us down, or we, you know, learned from that, does make us more sympathetic toward other people. I know when we see middle schoolers, when we go in for the different things, and I just think, oh my gosh, the overachiever.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for her. She's so nervous that she's not going to get it all done, and she's going to disappoint someone, you know, because that was you know, one of my struggles. You see that, and it helps you understand them.
I think the wounds of my youth make me much more empathetic, and especially for kids, when you realize what it is to be on the outside looking in all the time, or you understand what it is to be the kid that gets mocked, or gets joked, or who feels uncomfortable in their own skin. Yeah. And so, that only happens really through wounds. Yeah. It only happens through a certain amount of pain, and so we can take the lesson of that, we can take the experience of that, but that can also be a source of light. For us later. Yeah,
and that's why it's more important than ever for us to remember to use our words to encourage people and the light that they have in them. You know, even I love the way you always, you know, are so kind to your friends. I love the way you're such a good dad. You know, I love the way you always really follow through at work, you know, those kind of things, and that encourages people in who they are. And we know every day we need that. And so we have the ability to encourage people to remain who they are by encouraging them in it.
That's right. Well, friends, thank you for joining us and for coming out with us.
Good stuff.
Go get that cup of coffee or beer or a bite and solidify the stuff that happened in you if you had that kind of experience today, where you went back to those moments. And then if there's a chance and you can think of a place or something where maybe you need to make something right in that process. I think that's critical too. But that's the most amazing thing about this life that we're living, that both the positive and the negative can work for good in us if we choose to and allow to, and we're intentional about those things.
It's good. I'm
All right.
glad.
Till next time, thanks for joining us on the Mixed Up Mystics, and we will see you soon.
All right. See you guys next time.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening. We'd love it if you would like and subscribe to the podcast and then share it with the people you know. We want to include as many people as possible in the conversation. Thanks. This has been a production of Pioneer Dream.